Hello, it's Jayne Green from PD Training. How are you today? I'd like to talk to you about the fears of life that I've actually had myself, so that you can understand how I've combated those and that you can also combat these. And of course, all the psychology I've studied in my 2 degrees has certainly helped me overcome these, and I'm going to this video is actually going to tell you not just about my fears, where they came from, in other words, where yours come from, and also how to overcome these fears and to be free of them forever. So I'm going to start off with my fear of the dark. Now, my fear of the dark was so incredibly gripping. I remember sometimes waking up in the middle of the night. I would lie in bed and would be absolutely paralysed with fear in the darkness. And this was such a serious issue for me, which I didn't realise, of course, till many years later, looking back, that I was that fearful. I had to go back and look at where did this fear come from. And my mother told me she recalls coming home one day and the nanny was locking me in the room while she was out, completely in darkness, and telling me the dogs were going to come and get me. And Mum said I used to wake up screaming from night after night for a long time after she discovered this. Of course, the nanny got the instant sack, as you can imagine. However, to realise that this is where my fear came from, and in actual fact, to have been treated in this way certainly formed my schemas, my patterns of thinking. And schemas are formed very much in childhood. Most of our schemas are formed, which is the patterns of thinking that we have. And those patterns of thinking will control how we respond to events. Like, for example, I respond to events when it was dark by being paralysed with fear and not being able to go and turn on my own light to actually walk from my bed to the door, etc., to go to the toilet. Luckily, I had a very understanding husband at the time. So there was one. My second fear was of water. And whenever I was, in the swimming pool, I could never really swim by myself unless people were around me, or in the sea without people around me. And this again came from the childhood, which I vividly remember. And this would have been in Sri Lanka before we left, where my nanny, probably the same nanny, was holding my arms behind my back and pouring bucket after bucket of water over my head to wash my hair. I remember gasping for breath and not being able to breathe. And so, of course, for many, many years as an adult, I couldn't swim in a pool by myself, and I certainly couldn't go into deeper waters in the sea unless people were around me. And I always have this dreadful fear, just like I did of the dark, that something terrible was going to happen to me. The third fear I had was fear of death. I feared dying, and I especially feared losing my mother. So let me tell you where I think all these fears came from, and in your case, where you could look at your own fears and where they come from, and remembering that these schemas are patterns of thinking that are developed earlier on in childhood.